Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today, I'm going to be taking a look at Brandon Graham's new diary comic, Out from Living the Line. I apologize, this review is coming a little late. This book and the UFO Mushroom book, I got them like right when we were in the middle of the move. I try and get new books, especially stuff for Sean, Living the Line books turn around so people can get a look at them right away, but we're just busy and I haven't had time to record. I have been reading, though. I have a big stack of books I'm going through now, trying to get them all recorded. But super excited about this. Obviously, I love Brandon as a person, but I also love him as an artist. I loved him as an artist first. Always been a fan of his work, and always excited for a new Brandon Graham comic. This one, I think, is particularly timely and relevant since it covers some of Brandon's not like the story of Brandon's encounter with the Twitter mob and cancellation in any kind of detail. He just talks about it like tangentially in terms of the emotional impact on him and how he was dealing with it. But this was being put together right when Ed Piskor got canceled, then committed suicide, unfortunately. And I didn't know it, but Brandon was actually communicating with Ed during that time, amongst many other people. I don't know Ed or Jim personally close enough that it would be worth me getting involved in that. But Brandon, having had similar experience and knowing them better, was communicating with Ed a little bit and was able to get a tribute strip to Ed done in time to get into the book. And since they kind of both went through a ringer, I'm not going to say similar ringer, but they went through the Twitter ringer. I think that makes this book extra timely and extra important. But that's not the reason to buy the book. I wouldn't ever want to use someone else's tragedy to try and sell this. It's just, this is a problem in our society, and seeing someone who's gone through it and is working, to stay a human being when people are attacking them like that. I think it's really helpful stuff in here. Also, a bunch of other cool, fun stuff, and just a bunch of really beautiful drawings. I think Brandon sets himself out. Like, I don't really like diary comics. I've said that a lot on the channel, but I'm realizing that there's different types. Like, I enjoy like a Louis Trondheim autobiography. I enjoy Brandon's stuff. They're very strong artists. They create great visuals. They do formal play with stuff, and they tend to be more someone mulling on an idea, chewing something over, whereas there's people who do like the daily diary comic, and if nothing interesting is going on in their day, they still just tell you that they had a sandwich or whatever. And a lot of them complain about how hard it is to be an artist, and I don't know, but they're like, when you're getting visuals like this, when someone's taking their sketchbook and then taking the time to go in and add some color and think about the graphic design aspects of that, and that's obviously part of even the drawing process, is spacing things out in a pleasant way. And then a majority of the dialogue too just tends to be more interior and based on like thinking over ideas. When Brandon does go into telling you a story about his day, it's coming from the point of view of someone who's living a wild and interesting enough life that I actually want to hear about it. So this is a story from Brandon's. This is November, I can't tell what year it is, November 17th. I don't know what year. But this is Brandon's first stay in Vegas. Him and his girlfriend, Casey, were staying in Vegas and living in a house that was also being used to film pornography, I believe, but with trans actors. I'm not sure on that, but I know I've seen footage of them going to like the trans porn awards and stuff. So that's an interesting situation that not many people are in. I want to hear about it, and I don't think I'm spoiling anything. This is one of the ones that's been shared around a lot and talked about a lot, and me and Sean talked about it on Sean's talked about it on the channel, whatever, is that Brandon, they had this couch there, and Brandon really liked, because it had a light table built into it, and so he'd use it for his art. I don't know what feature that was actually supposed to be in, but coming home and finding their sex accoutrement right on top of the only thing he needed, and him having to just stare down this recently used strap-on. That's not a situation that most people are reporting on. So diary comics get a lot more interesting when a person is living an interesting life. And if you know Brandon, you spent the time talking to him, he's someone who likes to get out. He likes to go do stuff. And he always has really entertaining stories. He makes friends with interesting people, and that shows up. Also, something that Brandon does that I really like that has showed up in a number of his like sketchbooks and diary books and stuff, and even the things he was doing, I think it was for Image Plus, is he uses his sketchbooks to think through and explain and talk about ideas about how comics are made. And so that's a whole extra thing that a lot of people aren't doing in the diary comics that I find, makes this much more appealing. So this is just him talking about reading an issue of Doom Patrol. I don't know who the artist would have been on this, but realizing that the perspective in the panel makes no sense. And then so Brandon shows you like what it should have been and how, but that would have made it hard to fit, or maybe I could have done it this way. And then he says, you know what, but like it works. It communicates the idea. So what? So it's kind of like what we do on the Formalism Fridays. And that was one of the inspirations for Formalism Fridays, is when me and Brandon got connected at the very beginning of Living the Line. We both obviously had a love for it. I started talking to him about the Image Plus things he'd done because I thought they were cool, and we really connected over that. And yeah, I really like his brain for that. I mean, I'm someone who's obsessive about it, and Brandon's constantly showing me things that I I'm like, man, how did I miss that? So I love that aspect of it. I really, really, really like this one-page piece that here as well. This is Anatomy of a Casey Jones, Brandon's girlfriend. And I'm not sure how many people know this. It's not something we ever just like talk about because it's not, I don't know, it just doesn't seem important to me or Brandon or Sean. But Brandon's girlfriend has transitioned from male to female. And this is without any of the politics attached to it, without any of like the awful public discourse where people are shouting and yelling every which way. This is just two people that love each other. And Brandon is obviously doing this with Casey's permission, and Casey is able to share something about, self-perception and all of that. And I think this is a very sweet, loving, awesome thing that they've done here on this page that's humanizing an experience rather than turning it into any kind of political battlefield. And like, I don't really care what anyone's political opinions are on the topic. That I have my own opinions on what my limits are, with how I use language and things like that. But this is great. This is humanizing. So I love this page. And there's just like, you could tell like they love each other, and there's a lot of like poking fun at each other that I'm sure some people are gonna like shit on as inappropriate or whatever. But like, this is between two people in their relationship, and they put this out and they're happy with it. And I love that. That's how relationships are, like Casey has a daily workout routine to give her bigger hips and a knockout figure. Casey says she has boy feet. Girl butt and hips, like stuff like that. It's just playful and fun. Here's another really interesting thought just on drawing in general. Brandon makes a ton of these in here. This is something that I've had when I've talked to students that have taken my class, and then I'm asking them like the end of the semester how I can make things more clear. This has actually been brought up to me a number of times, even though I never thought about it, is that some people really do like to think about the picture plane as a window, and you can see Brandon imagining himself like reaching further back to draw further back. And that metaphor never made sense to me, but enough students have said it, and seeing this reinforces it that I use that now, and it does help people. Also, Brandon's pointing out a really cool optical effect that I think people don't take as much advantage of as they could in comics. But the little like blip of gray that shows up in between panels, that's an optical illusion. He's going into the Ponzi effect and stuff. So just someone who's like really curious and thirsty and wants to share what they've learned, like you can't get better than that. It's really fun to see Brandon doing like portraits, because I'm so used to him working in his cartoon style or making up, he's not obviously referencing when he's drawing his comics. They're very stylized. It's cool to see Brandon doing some portraiture. I really like anytime Brandon draws with pencil, because he does have a really nice sense of touch and like delicate changes in line weight that do show up in his pen work. But because the pencils get on their side, it allows him to get even thicker, and he draws different. He draws very different with the pencil, at least the finished touch. And I quite like seeing that. And then seeing him working in a different mode, realism, doing some caricature here of Oscar Wilde. I love seeing that. One of the topics that I think, like, especially as I've gotten to know Brandon, but even before I knew him really well, and I was reading Rain Like Hammers, and I just kind of knew a little bit about his story with the, attempt to cancel him. It's very obvious to me that identity and those related topics are something that Brandon keeps coming back to in his work. And here he's doing a sketchbook idea for the Matrix TV series. And I think he's got a really great idea, especially knowing that the Wachowskis have both transitioned themselves. So that topic of identity seen through the trans lens is kind of baked into the Matrix, I think. And then obviously now, like, Brandon being more out about his relationship with Casey, he just doesn't ever make a big deal about it. So that's why but they're never, like, not trying to talk about it either. But it makes sense to me that, like, Brandon would have a great idea for the Matrix, and I really love what he's proposing here. A trans character unable to get hormones in the real world could be seen how they see themselves in the virtual world. And then he goes on to complicate the idea of identity in a virtual world even further by saying multiple people could occupy the same body at the same time in the Matrix, doer or try drive. Within the Matrix is a hero, a James Bond body that has been driven by generations of people in the real world. That's a fascinating idea to me, and it really cuts to the core of identity. I had a very strange experience where I was interviewing someone in Second Life, and there was me and one other person conducting the interview with only Christine, the artist, Christine Schumacher, a really awesome artist that worked in Second Life for a long time, did a lot of virtual art, is now doing some really cool real-world stuff based on identity and whatnot. We were interviewing Christine through Second Life, so we had to make a character, and me and Derek, the other guy who was conducting the interview, were sat at one laptop together, occupying one body in Second Life, two voices. So Christine's experience on the other side was one avatar with two voices coming out of it. And that was the first time I ever had that idea of, like, the ability of multiple people to occupy one body in the virtual world. It was a really strange experience. And then I thought, oh my God, like, how many kids are having, like, their first sexual experience that way these days? 4 or 5 kids, teenagers or preteens that have made an avatar, and they're in a place like Second Life where you can do sexual stuff. And yeah, they're like experiencing jointly, 5 or 6 of them crowded around the computer, their first, like, real sexual experience through one shared body. I just thought that was such a strange idea at the time, and it's always been in the back of my head. So as soon as I came across this, I was like, oh yeah, of course. And then you put that in the Matrix, and what you know about the creators there, those ideas are super baked into it. If you've seen Sense8 or any of their other material that they put out, it's a pretty obvious great pitch for the Matrix, and it's right in line with, I think, the multiplicity of ways. Like, I think Brandon has identity at the core of what he does, at least in my reading, and then he's looked at it from, like, every angle in his series. And again, it's just another evidence of. And when I talk to Brandon, it's always like, oh, I don't know. He's always like, it's all intuition. But I think he's a very, very deep thinker and philosopher about identity. This is interesting because this is a page that had been posted on the internet a while back. This is an old journal diary that got put on Brandon's Patreon, I would assume, because that's where most of these things go up. And I don't think this is all Brandon's. This is a curated selection of his journal, his diaries. But this one you can see all the hand lettering on it from when it was originally done. And then we have the computer done lettering based on a font of Brandon's lettering up here. So he's able to go back and reflect on, this is what I said at the time, and then, like, this is what happened later. And I think that's a really cool structure that they've put into this book too, that allows it to be not just the day of the diary, but also this idea of self-reflection later, after growth has happened, even potentially. That's a really interesting take on the diary, is that the diary is something to be revisited and re-interacted with, not just I'm getting the shit out of my head today and then never looking at it. So up here it says, after I posted this one on the internet, someone wrote an article using me watching Louis C.K. comedy and reading a Nabokov book as proof of me being a bad person. So just guilty by association. And then the irony that the Nabokov book I was reading wasn't his controversial Lolita, but was the real life of Sebastian Knight, about a man trying to uncover the truth after a false biography is published about his late brother. So actually, he's reading a book about someone who's being slandered publicly with untruths in a false biography. And yeah, that must have been like the height of obnoxious to then have people like just completely fire off at the mouth without even taking the time to realize what they're talking about. So there's things like that that's the kind of stuff where you see how not exactly what happened, but kind of the aftermath of what dealing with people trying to get rid of you is like. And then this is the one, I'm not going to read it here, but this is the tribute to Ed Piskor, and it starts with anecdote of when I was in my 20s, Paul Pope offhandedly said to me, "We're going to know each other when we're old." And Brandon said, "Cool, but today I feel old." And yeah, it's just heartbreaking what happened there. I think pretty much everyone's in agreement on that whole situation was awful in all regards and shook our community to the core. I hope really people took that as a chance to reflect, and I'm really, really glad that Brandon, especially because he's able to say, like, I was talking to Ed. Like, Ed asked, how long did it take you to get back in the swing? To have a report from someone who is there and had been through it, and they're able to do a tribute to say rest in peace, that's beautiful, and I'm really glad that got to be in here as just like a little coda to the book at the end. The other thing that I want to point out about the book is that it's on some really, really nice paper. I don't know what Sean chose, but it looks and feels kind of like old comic newsprint. But I know like Sean's not going to do newsprint because it's not going to hold up over time. So I'm not sure what paper he picked, but it's a nice matte paper. I think Brandon's art looks fantastic on matte paper because of the coloring that he uses has that European flavor, and I've always liked those flat colors printed on the matte paper like this. And then to have the tactile quality of it is something I've really missed in a lot of comics lately. So whatever this paper is a really interesting choice, and like a really, really good choice, a really sophisticated choice that I would have never thought like, oh yeah, let's go get something that feels kind of like flimsy old comic paper, but is a little thicker, a little sturdier, and it gives you everything you want out of that nostalgic experience, but you also know like, okay, this is going to hold up and this is going to last. And then of course just the production throughout the book, the print quality throughout the book, like obviously with Sean on board, it's just an amazing package through and through. So yes, please go get yourself if you have not already. I'm sure this is old news to a lot of you since it took me a while to get it out, but Surviving on Mars by Brandon Graham. And even if this review doesn't sell any copies, I can send it to Brandon and he can hear all the wonderful things I have to say about him because I love him and I'm super excited to have this new book.